everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So it's time for another weekly update and I have 5 books to talk to you about today that I've finished since last time. So before we get started, I guess leave a tiger emoji in the comments to let me know that you're here. So like always, we'll start at the lowest and work our way up to the highest rated. The first book I'll talk about today is a 3-star book, and that's The Kingdom of Flesh and Fire by Jennifer L. Armentrout. So basically, this is the sequel to From Blood and Ash, and it's this adult fantasy romance, I guess. Here, Poppy's world has kind of, been upended a bit, and she must work with Castile, who is the Dark One and the Prince of Atlantia, to find her brother. People, however, kind of want to use her for their own goals, and we've got, some secrets at play. I kind of mentioned this in the book haul when I was talking about the third book. I did not really enjoy this nearly as much as the first book. Like, the first book, I think I rated 4.5 stars, and so, dropping down to a 3-star book is a bit significant, but for me, I think it felt like it took a really long time to get going. It had a lot more dialogue than action, and I'm not sure if it was just like me not being in the right mood for it, because certainly it's been a bit busy for me lately. I've been trying to frantically get my dissertation together. I've also been applying for jobs and actually did have an interview last week. So I think it just may not have been the right time for me to pick this up, but still, I think it does seem pretty repetitive, especially with a lot of the same phrases and conversations coming up several times. It's one of those things where it's like, once I notice a phrase coming up a lot, I can't not notice it. And that happened multiple times here where I was like, I really don't like how you're referring to things, and don't love that phrasing. So yeah, I kind of struggled to get through this, but I will say the ending was pretty intriguing, and it's still it's like this weird sort of addictive writing. Even though I did struggle with it, I still find myself wanting to know where the story is going. I did like the development that we get with people's powers and abilities here. I liked Poppy taking charge of her life more and fighting back. One of the things, again, with this repetitive phrasing, I think there's a lot of talk throughout the book about her being violent and asking random questions. So characters would be like, oh, that's an incredibly random question. And so that happened over and over and over. And I was like, I don't know. Are we supposed to think she's quirky? I don't know. But oh my God, that just drove me insane. Poppy is kind of stuck in this tough situation where her powers are getting stronger, and she has the ability to basically feel other people's emotions, and so she's kind of stuck in this terrible situation where it's hard to deal with feeling other people's emotions and knowing that they don't like her or trust her. It's definitely a tough and kind of isolating place to be in. I think, again, I just didn't really feel the chemistry with the romance as much here, and I'm not really sure what happened. I think, with Castile and Poppy, they are learning to trust each other more, and it seems like it's going to be a useful bond. I think it was possibly the repetition with a lot of these events that kind of detracted from the romance for me. Again, not entirely sure why. This just was not as impressive to me. I did like getting to know the Wolven more, especially Kieran. He seems like a really good guy and a very useful and loyal friend to have. So I definitely want to see more of him in the next book. I also liked how we get a little bit more of the gods being involved here. That's something I always seem to enjoy in my books, and I'm certainly very curious to see what happens next. Even though I did struggle in places, I do feel like I am interested certainly in continuing this series, and hopefully the next one will be a little bit better for me. The next 3-star book I'll talk about is Deadeye by Alyssa Day. So this was the choice to read this month for my Urban Fantasy Paranormal Romance book club, and this is more of an adult urban fantasy / mystery, and we follow Jack, who is a tiger shifter who learns that he inherited this pawn shop from his uncle. So he returns home to Dead End, Florida, and teams up with Tess, who works at this pawn shop and is also his co-inheritor, I guess, of this pawn shop, and they team up to solve his uncle's murder. So I will say, from the synopsis, it seems like you follow Jack. That's actually not true. You mostly follow Tess. This is definitely a fun and light read. I think it was pretty quick to read. It's not super long. Even though this was enjoyable, it doesn't have the most depth. And I'll be honest, I was kind of torn between rating this a 3.5 star book, and I was kind of thinking about it while trying to write this review, and I was like, I feel like I don't remember all of this, so I don't think it has the lasting power for me, and so that's kind of why I decided to drop it down to a 3-star book. It does have a really funny tone overall. You can definitely tell it's a spin-off of one of her other series because it does mention a lot of things dealing with Jack and Atlantis. And I actually personally thought it was fine to jump in here. without having read that, though, like, I'm certainly curious to learn more about what happened in that other series. It's a really fun setting, especially with this pawn shop, and we do have like a, you know, a taxidermied alligator mascot, so I just thought like those little touches were pretty enjoyable. I liked this mystery of what happened to, you know, Jack's uncle, and there's another girl who gets murdered, so it's, you know, it's like, why were they murdered, and who did it? I think some of the reveals with this particular plot were not terribly surprising, but it's still enjoyable enough. I did like Tess. She has this curse that kind of causes her to be cautious with interacting with other people. She seems pretty nice overall, certainly wants to help people, so I did like that. Her aunt and uncle also seem really lovely. I liked all of her like fun friends and acquaintances. I think we got a lot of really enjoyable interactions. I also did enjoy Jack. He is definitely an alpha male, but I think he's more of this like protective alpha. He certainly is very protective of Tess. We do have hints of like this possible developing romance, so I enjoyed this, and it doesn't feel forced at all, so that's, you know, that's promising. I think it's going to be perhaps more of a slow burn romance. We also have, you know, like one of the side characters that kind of comes up a little bit is Agent Vasquez, and he's, you know, not terribly involved in this plot, but he seems like he could be involved more in future books, so I'm kind of curious to see if that is actually the case. We do have some content warnings here for things like seizures, and something that I did get a little bit annoyed with a couple of times was like Tess would say some things that were basically implying that having feelings was girly, and I was like, I don't like that. Aside from that, you know, I did have a good time overall with this. I don't know if it's necessarily something I want to continue. Certainly if I'm like in the mood for like a really light, easy read, this could be a good one to pick up. But yeah, so like overall, I enjoyed my time with it. Does it have sticking power? Probably not. So we'll move to a couple of 3.5-star books, and the first one I'll talk about here is Hairpin Bridge by Taylor Adams. So I received this for review from the publisher through NetGalley, and this comes out June 15th. So this is an adult thriller, and we follow Lena as she investigates her twin sister's death because she doesn't believe her sister committed suicide. So she meets with the highway patrolman who supposedly found her and basically thinks his story just doesn't quite add up. So this was, oh my goodness, it was extremely fast-paced, intense. I definitely had some surprises. I don't think I enjoyed it quite as much as No Exit by Taylor Adams, which I read, I think, last year and really liked. I think the difference for me here was that I had less of a connection with the main character. That being said, you know, this is just non-stop tension. We get an interesting second point of view following Cambry, who is Lena's twin. Both points of view are like ridiculously action-packed, and it really just doesn't let up. Lena is obviously extremely driven to find out what happened to her sister, even though they haven't been talking that much. They're kind of estranged at this point. And, you know, in her quest for the truth, she does sometimes neglect her own health and safety, which is sometimes, like, you know, some of these decisions are a bit questionable, but she is very smart, and I liked how she has some useful skills and does plan ahead. There's certainly more than meets the eye with this case, and I really enjoyed learning about it as the book progressed. There's definitely some unlikable characters here. I think some of the plot points are a bit of a stretch to believe, but I enjoyed this overall. There are certainly content warnings here for suicide and mentions of schizoid personality disorder. I don't want to say too much more because it is a thriller and like it's really best to experience it for yourself, but I did have an excellent time with this, and if you're looking for like an extremely fast-paced, tension-filled thriller, I would definitely suggest picking this up. So the other 3.5-star book I'll talk about is Such a Quiet Place by Miranda. So I also received this for review from the publisher through NetGalley, and this comes out July 13th. This is also an adult thriller, and basically we have this quiet community where a couple was murdered, and one of the residents was implicated in this murder. A year and a half later, Ruby, this resident who was implicated in the murder, is back, and suspicion is spreading, and it seems like the residents have some secrets. So I really liked this overall. This is, I think, the third book by Miranda that I've read, and I do think this is one of the ones that works better for me. I think it's more of this quiet or chill type of thriller. Like, it's still really engaging, but it's certainly like really focused on this small community and these sort of day-to-day details. I did not guess the overall reveal, and I really enjoy what she did with this. I liked trying to figure out if Ruby did in fact, you know, kill these neighbors, and just generally what secrets everyone has. I really liked the setting with the community. You know, I think basically like everything takes place in this one neighborhood, and basically all the characters you deal with are in this neighborhood. So it's kind of, I guess, like a locked room type of vibe. It's certainly really interesting to think about, what secrets people keep, and just generally wondering, like, how well do you truly know some people? I really liked our main character, Harper. She seems very nice, but she is a bit naive. I definitely felt bad for her at times because she does feel like an outsider, and I think people are able to manipulate her. So, I think she does genuinely have a good heart, but she does get taken advantage of. Ruby, this, supposed murderer, is not the most likable all the time. She certainly does have some flaws, but she can actually be a pretty decent friend to Harper at times, so, I feel a little bit conflicted about her. I definitely had a really fun time with this, and I will certainly read more from Miranda, so if you're looking for more of a quiet thriller that's really focused on this one particular community, I would definitely suggest picking this one up. So the last book I'll talk about today is The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. So this is a 5-star book for me, and this is an adult fantasy that we read for the Space Sirens book club. By the time I post this video, we'll actually be having a discussion on our Space Sirens book channel, and you can come watch the live show if you want to. Hopefully, the timing will work out. I think we're supposed to be doing this at 11 Eastern. This book is set in a world where the Emperor maintains his rule with the use of bone shard magic in these constructs. But his rule is failing and revolution is spreading. We have Lynn, who is his daughter, and she wants to prove her worth by mastering this bone shard magic to be recognized officially as his heir. So this was so enjoyable. I think the pacing worked really well for me, and the writing was particularly engaging. We do follow several, I think about 5 different points of view, and this kept things really exciting, especially as you see the storylines start to weave together. At first, some of the storylines you're just like, where is this coming from? I have no idea how this is connected, but and I think there is still one point of view that hasn't fully connected yet, but should, I think, in the next one, so I'm very excited for that. The world building is particularly great here. I really liked this island setting that we have, where obviously, we're in this world where bone shard magic is supposedly used to protect against these Alenga, and I think they're kind of like godlike beings. People are certainly getting restless for understandable reasons, it's been a really long time since these beings were seen, and so they're like, is this bone shard magic really necessary at this point? And you can definitely understand why a revolution is brewing. The bone shard magic itself is quite interesting. You basically engrave commands on these bone shards to power these constructs, and you can basically imbue them with different abilities and purpose. Some of the constructs are kind of a bit of these monstrous mashups of various animals. It's certainly a darker magic, and I really liked exploring this idea. I enjoyed all of our characters as well. Lynn was particularly fun to follow. She just wants to prove that she's capable of being the heir and being worthy of her father's attention and love. I think she has this really interesting journey of realizing that she actually may want to go on this new path that she defines for herself. I liked learning about the bone shard magic with her as well. One of our other characters, Jovis, is this smuggler, and he's sort of like the reluctant hero type. He definitely gets involved in these larger events, and I really liked his development. I think, it's very exciting to see him realize that larger goals are perhaps more important than some of his own personal goals. I also just loved his animal companion, Meffy. Meffy is the best. We always need more Meffy. And I'm just so excited to see what happens next with Meffy. We do also have a couple of other characters on another island. One of them is a daughter of the governor, and the other is her girlfriend. And we get to see, I think, different classes of life and how they live. Our characters kind of realize, I think, some of the injustice of some of these situations going on, and do want to change things for good. I think for me, the best point of view characters were probably Jovis and Lynn. The other characters were still enjoyable, but I don't know if I liked them quite as much. We do also just generally have some really interesting mysteries and setup, and I just absolutely cannot wait to explore this more in the next book. This book is inspired by Asian culture, so we do have a bit of diversity here as well, and obviously with some of these points of view, we do have a sapphic relationship. But yeah, I just really loved this. I think the writing is so easy to get into, and I just cannot wait for the next book. So if you're looking for, a fun adult fantasy that has this kind of, darker magic system and lots of different interesting points of view with complex storylines that end up, coming together, like I would definitely suggest picking this up. I am currently reading Shorefall by Robert Jackson Bennett. So I think for, I guess with reading The Bone Shard Daughter, like some of the magic kind of actually reminded me of the magic in this series with like the scribing technology, and basically like you can imbue commands and stuff on things. So it's slightly different, but like a similar idea. And so I was kind of like, I kind of actually want to read Shorefall now. So this, this is a good time to pick it up. I feel like I definitely want to get through some of the books that I included on the like most intimidating books on my TBR video that I recently did, which, this one was one of them. So I'm like excited to see where this goes. I'm only 18 pages in, so like I don't have, the best idea of what's going to happen, but I'm excited to return to this world. Again, don't know how much I remember from the first book, but hopefully that will be okay. And I am excited to see what happens here. So for reading plans for what I might do next, I'm not entirely sure. It might depend on how I feel after finishing Shorefall, like if I want more like adult fantasy. I have recently been approved for some arcs on NetGalley, including A Master of Djinn, so I do want to get to that because that comes out, in May. So I kind of want to read like the 2 short stories / novellas leading into that, but that shouldn't take me all that long. So, perhaps I'll just like kind of do a little bit of a marathon. We'll see. But yeah, so like really no concrete plans, I guess, which is perhaps unsatisfying to hear. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of these books or think you might pick them up. With that, I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link is in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.